eModels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Shut up and sit down.
Hello gang, Colin here, Festa 67's workshop, and we are going to be doing a bit of the diorama, a bit of weathering, and the reveal. So, what we do is we get a bit of cereal box and we draw around our cutting mat. So we get a nice uniform A4 size bit of card. Like so. Right. So we'll do two of them and then we'll glue both of those together. Okay. So we get a bit of white glue. I'm using Gorilla at the moment, but you can use ordinary PVAs, tacky glues, etc. So whatever you've got to hand to join a couple of bits of cardboard together. Now I tend to make my own frames. I mean you can buy picture frames, which I've done in the past, but you tend to not use the glass. You tend to use a different bit of board, or if you've got to make it bigger you have to add bits to it. So you can never get one the right size. So by doing it this way you can make your own. So we'll get that and join it together like so, and then give it a little press around, and then we'll get a few of the old clothes pegs around the edges in a minute, and we'll just smooth that out first. Plenty of oozage. There you go. Yeah. And then we'll start clipping it together just whilst the glue goes off and holds it in place. So we'll do that. I'll just quickly smooth out the edges because I don't want it to start rippling up if I can help it. Yeah, a bit of glue on the bench, never hurts, does it? And then just start using some clothes pegs. Now what I do with my pegs is I spin the wooden part around 180 degrees so they make little alligator nips. So they're perfect for this sort of thing, so have a go at doing it. And yeah, they come in really handy, especially if you're doing bits on models as well, like wings and that. You can just quickly run a load of them along the wing edge, and you literally just take the wood out, spin it round, and make your pegs. But we'll just cut along the edge here just to get rid of this bit of excess, and then we can trim it nice and close to neaten it up a bit. Like so. Come towards the corner there and just drop that out of the way, and turn it around and do the same the other end. Yeah, like so. And then we can run a few pegs along the edge there just to keep that under tension, don't want it lifting. I'll quickly knock these off and do this edge whilst I think of it. Try and round that corner off a bit, and then it'll dry. Yeah, like so. Quickly drop the pegs back in because it's not fully dry yet. Another one in there. And quickly do the same this side, because we're going to be using this as the base, so we're kind of attaching the balsa wood frame edges to it. So if I can get this nice and flat, then it helps when it comes to clamping it all together later on. But the beauty of the wood is it'll just add a bit of rigidity to it. But they're a nice lightweight solution to a diorama base, so have a go at making your own, see what you think. a little bit of peggage in the corner there, and that is the sides done. I'll just grab a couple of clamps and just put them in there, move me mat, squeaky chair, and then I've got generic packs of this balsa wood, and I run a ruler along on a 45° each end, and I'm doing 4 of those. So we'll move the cardboard out of the way, get the pegs off. As the glue's dried, this is time-lapsed by the way, so it's a little bit quicker than what I made it. So I'll just quickly line that up with the edge of the card, hold it in place and mark a couple of marks. Just check the corner there. Yeah. Couple of little mark lines, and then I'll run my set square along the side. So I'll just grab that, mark a line, and then I'll check the 45 just to make sure. Yeah. Rescribe that. Yeah, it was just a bit out. I'll grab me saw and do ourselves a little bit of speed sawing. Yeah, look at that man go. Underlay. Yeah. So we'll get that trimmed off, and then we can finish the edge off with a bit of sandpaper once the frame's made. Just quickly come down the edges there. Yeah, and move that all out of the way. And that's the length of the frame then. So grab me ruler, and I worked it out that I can get 4 lengths or frame sides out of this one piece. So I'll just do it a steel ruler width all the way down, and I'll get 4 of them on this piece. I use a thicker bit of balsa for the frame base, and then I use a slightly thinner section for the frame walls. Look at that. Yeah. Now comes the bad part. Captain Stabbit, he's getting the knife out. Yeah. What possibly could go wrong? So we'll just scribe a line with the blade back to front first. Yeah. That's it. Come all the way down. Like so. And then we'll do a cut line through. Just have a quick peek, make sure that it's going nearly all the way through, and then we'll do a final cut so that we can separate the pieces. And that will be the edges ready to go. So we'll just break that off and then do the rest of those. So I'll speed it up a bit. There you go. That's more like it, isn't it? Yeah. So we'll get them done, and then quickly drop a 45° on each one that we don't want. A little X there so I know what's the waste. I'll get rid of that. Same that side, and we can start gluing and pegging that to the card and start forming the frame. So we'll just do the rest of those. Glue them in place. Like so. And then do the ends. I'll just quickly mark the lines. 45° cut. Get them sawn off. glue them in place. Scribe me lines, do a bit of sawing, and we can get that one in. And that is the frame base sorted. So I can take the pegs off because obviously I've time lapsed this so the glue's had time to dry, and then we'll get some pins and we'll start pinning the frame then. So I'll get to grab my hammer, drop the frame back in place, and I'll quickly make the uprights of the frame whilst I'm here, like so. It's exactly the same process as I did for the sides, except for I'm not doing a 45 mitre on these. So I'll be edge gluing them, and then I'll go around with the pins and tack everything together. But the pins I just use a little box of Prem pins. And the only reason I use them is because I'm using white glue on this and not no nails, because someone run out. I thought I'd pin them as well, just to make the frame nice and rigid. So I'll just quickly test fit everything, run a bead of glue down the side and put that piece in, and then once everything's supporting itself, I can then go around and put the pins in place. But you should be able to see now that the frame is beginning to take shape, and it just gives me an area then where I can put in some polystyrene packing, and I'll be able to raise a base. So we'll get that in place like so, and that's beginning to take shape now. So we can just get the old hammer out and tack a pin in place just to secure them whilst the glue sets. And then I'll do some pins on the base inside the uprights and tack them into the face sections of the frame just to give it a bit of support. And that is the frame tacked and ready, and yeah, looking all nice and neat. So we can get on with doing that. Like so, and grab the polystyrene and just start marking the edges now. Get me knife, give it a rough cut so I can just break the edge, and I tend to use my steel ruler just to cut straight through it. Look at that. There you go. And I'll just quickly knock off the edge like so. Break them bits off, and then just quickly glue in. Only a few dabs of glue are needed for the styrene, just to get it to have something to bite in, and that is raised it up, and we can just line the cat over where he's going to stand and start building the edges, because I'm going to have a slope at the back behind the cat, because I've got a crafty little item going in there that will just help the viewer of the build get an idea of scale. So keep an eye out for what goes on the ramp in the background. I'll just build in some front edges, because I'm basically building here a little area that the cat walks into to recharge its lasers. Yeah, it's not real, I know, but in my mind it is. So it has to walk across, and when it's parked at night, it rests its head on a big electric charging unit that charges up the lasers, and then it walks off the following morning and shoots all the rocks that the dump trucks take out of the quarry. So in Festa's mind, the cat exists. So we're just building up the rock face now. Nothing too fancy, just loads of chunks of odd shapes of styrene, nothing too uniform, because I want nooks, I want crannies, I want little areas that may have been blasted the day before, that sort of thing. And then I'm just knocking off the beginnings of an angle here, so that I can then angle another couple of pieces of polystyrene so that we can start forming the ramp. And it's, again, you know, very basic technique, but this is all getting covered. So I'll just make a little wedge for the front edge of the ramp, like so, and just keep chopping bits off of it until I get the angle that I'm after. And this is always the stage of the dio where you look at it and you think, oh my god. But I know what's in my mind and I know what I need to get it there, so I'm just beavering away, building up the edges and getting a rough approximation of the shape. And then again, because when you look at cliffs and things, you have different layers of rock, and that's why I build this in layers, so that you almost get an impression that you've got layered rock as it's formed over the years. So that's what we're doing. We're just forming that, and again there's going to be little nooks and crannies in the back as well, so that if anyone's looking at it from the other side, there's just a little bit of character as well, just to keep something in the eye. So we'll carry on and get that sorted, and that's the initial forming of it. And then we just get some pins into the polystyrene whilst the glue dries to keep it in place, and they'll stay there. I'll cover them over. So we'll just keep spinning it around and adding a bit of support. And these are only them prim pins that I was talking about earlier. And I've got some 3D printed parts to go on here as well, so we'll be knocking over in a sec to the 3D print area, just to show you a rough idea of how that all works, and how I'm going to integrate some bits into the build. Okay, so we'll do that in a second. This is me 3D printing the stuff for the cat, for the eModels build. Doing a nice little set of flat boulders for the terrain. And the time lapses of these will be following shortly, but that lets you see the setup I have. So we've got my bench just there. And right next to it is the 3D printing station. Yeah. And that's what we've got going on. So we'll let that print. And whilst that one's printing, I'll play you the others, and then we'll come back and carry on with the diorama. Right, as you can see, I've finished my 3D printing, and I've put some rocks on the top edge of the cliff face there, and a couple of flat rocks poking out the sides, and in the bottom left we've got a generator beginnings of, and then we're just putting a bit of AK rough terrain on the front of the polystyrene face there, just to start forming the front edges of sort of rock face, you know. And there's just a very thin amount going on there initially, because I want to keep some of the lines of the rock formation, the geology of it, and just form the base of the floor. Little bits of detritus, odd boulders and things. But this is a little area where they've put large boulders in and the cats walk in and they just charge up overnight, a bit like a parking bay. So that's what we're doing, and then we'll work our way all round adding this terrain on there. And it gives you a chance to get messy fingers as well, because I do resort to the fingers and just pack it in there and form little nooks and crannies and things. So just using it almost as a filler and just really wadging it on there now to get the texture that I want. And then any massive protrusions I'll just nip off at the end once it's all dried up, just to get the shape I want, and then build the slope up, because there's a little feature going on there that's going to make an appearance in a minute. And it'll just give an idea of the scale of the actual cat itself compared to something in real life. So we'll carry on putting in base around the edges of the frame and start integrating the dio into the frame, filling in any little areas. And then I've got some AK desert sand just to do smaller areas, and all of this is going to get covered over with a primer, and then various filters and things just to try to get the effect of ground, which is normally UMP primer and Starship filth, to be honest. It just gives you a nice grey area, and then you can put in some weathering and some dust and some mud or grime and powders just to form it up. But I'm just going in with a smaller desert stand stuff now, just to give the idea of texture, because where these were 3D printed boulders, they did have a few lines on them from the printing process, and this stuff just basically puts on a little texture to take them lines away, and also just give it a bit more of a rocky appearance and texture, just in case anyone sees the diorama and actually wants to sort of touch the dio, they get that texture as they touch it. So just carry on and give it a covering. Do all the little nooks and crannies, and we're beginning to get an idea of what I'm after. So believe it or not, at this stage I know what I want at the end. So yeah, keep at it. And there's the little Warhammer. Fox put me a challenge and said, I defy you to get a Warhammer dude or a chain rasp or ghosts or whatever they're called. Yeah, spot the person who doesn't know Warhammer. So yeah, I dropped him in there. So we'll just carry on round now, blending in the edges of the dio to the frame, and then we can just quickly go around now with some finer desert sand just to touch up a few areas. Quick inspection, and yeah, start sanding the frame smooth now. Any terrain that may or may not have spilled onto the frame you can just get rid of, and then gives me a chance just to have a quick eyeball around the dio just to make sure I'm reasonably happy with how it's coming out before I give it a coat of primer. And I usually, the first few coats of primer that I put down, I normally do by a brush anyway, just so that I can get in all the little nooks, and then once that's done I quickly then go over it with a mist coat on the airbrush just to tidy it up. So that's more or less what I'm after. So we'll probably start priming that in a sec. So I'll just have a looky-loosey with my generator, and then we can start gluing that in. Now this big old generator is what the cat's head is going to rest against. There's another piece to go on the top of it, but I shall actually put this on with a hot glue just to try to get it to stick. So I'll scrape off a little bit of the sand just to give it a base, and then there's a little point that will go on the top, and the cat, the two lasers or the two guns on his front of his face will rest against it. So just a quick little tidy up of any joins on the frame. Smooth it all round. Just like that. Getting all the little areas. We can go, yeah. So that should then be ready to dry, and then we can put in a bit of primer. So I'm using the UMP primer, and I'm just going over now all the edges, seams and sort of nooks and crannies first, and then it'll then be infilled with prime. So I'll just go over that and get that all sorted out, and we can then darken it as we go along. So everything's going to get a coat of this, and it's, as Ted would say, just slap it on there.
Slap it on.
Thanks, Ted. So we can get on with the prime in there after our guest appearance from Professor Tedward McSkippon, and get round to doing the edges there, getting underneath the rocks, the boulders, working our way round and up onto the ramp and the rock faces there, and just give it a good larraping. Come back over there around the generators and just start getting a little bit of colour in there, and we can go over with other colours and things just to give it a bit more depth and a little bit of shade and shadow here and there. But we just want to get rid of the white, the sand colour, etc., and just try to now start mixing it all together, and just come round these little nooks underneath the little rock faces and a bit on the frame there, just to start sealing the wood. So I'll just give my other bottles a shake whilst I'm letting that dry down a tad, and then we can come back at it and start going round and repeating the process with different colours. So just give me bottle a shake, and then we can come back at it, and as you see straight away I've just darkened it up a little bit, and we can really now start going into it and getting stuff on there and making a rather large mess of the frame, but that's all getting a coat as well. And it's the same thing round the rocks, round the boulders, just darken everything up. Now that we've got something on there that's sealed everything, we can really go to town. Come back at it, darken it down round to the front of the frame. I'm getting in all the little edges and everything, and I'll probably put 2 coats of this down on there, and then obviously I'll be blacking the frame once the diorama is taking shape. It just gives you an idea on how you can knock up a reasonably simple diorama that it can start to look effective when the actual model is put in place, and it just gives it something that makes it a little bit more unique, you know. So that's what we'll do on there, and we'll come along and add a bit of feature as we go along. So my Warhammer dudes had a coat of primer as well, so I shall go around and repaint him in a mo. Just come round the back of the frame then and start getting in the shaded areas. Work my way along the back edge of the frame there. And that will come in quite nicely then. And then we can have a breather and a cup of tea when we've painted this. A bit of a tidy up as well, because my bench is getting a bit messy. But all in all, I'm quite happy with the first coat of primer there. So we'll pack everything away and have a quick clean up. Now this is the little thing going in the back of the Dio, and it's my little dump truck. Now I say little dump truck, on a building or a quarry these things are absolutely massive in real life, but obviously compared to the cat they're quite ickle. So yeah, so I'm going to put some rocks and detritus in it, and they'll get a coat of primer and darken down later on, but I'll just drop the hot glue in there and just press a load of boulders in the back. But that little bad boy came off the 3D printer, see, so you can integrate things from 3D printing into your dioramas. So he's going to go on the little ramp at the back, and when the cat is on there you'll be able to look through his legs and see that in the background, and it will just give you an idea like so of the scale of it. It's just something I wanted to put on there to give the person looking at the build an idea of size. So that's hot glued in place and he ain't going nowhere. So the cat himself will go in the little cubby hole at the front there, and you'll just see that under his belly and between the legs there, and you think, what's that round the back there? Oh, it's a Caterpillar truck. So we've got some 3D printed dudes that will go in the cat as well, so that'll give it an idea of the scale, and they're in 1/4/4 scale. So we'll carry on just going around now with a little bit of black to blacken the frame down, and the name plaques were 3D printed as well, and they've had a bit of bronze Tamiya paint painted over them, and the black writing is only there because there's gold going on top of it. So there's a little old extra thin bottle there full of some pre-made Starship filth, and that's just beginning to go over everything now, just to add a little bit of a wash and a bit of dirt where it's rained and stuff has washed off of things, and it's, you know, a bit of the dust and detritus on the ground. So the whole Dio will get a coat of Starship filth, but I start off with the Tamiya brush and do the edges, and then I'll put a bigger brush in and come over it all and just wash it over. Now 2 or 3 coats of this will just give it some features, and then you can go around with a cotton bud or Q-tip for our American friends and wipe off anything that you don't want on there. But this is just to give some features to everything, and where there are little nooks and crannies and cracks in the rock faces, this stuff will find its way in there and stay there, and it just gives everything that look of realism. So, and it can be matted down with a quick brush of matte varnish over everything through the airbrush, so it won't be this shiny when it's finished, but everything gets a coat, even the truck. So, you know, it's probably been a rainy day and everything's had a bit of a a larrapin, so we'll put that on there like so, and it just gives everything a little bit of that rocky feel. And then I can go over with some dust, some ground scatter, that sort of thing, just to give it that dried off patchy look in a few places around the feet of the cat and things like that will be dust, so I can have some of that on the ground where it's bumped off his feet. But that gives you an idea. And again, the plates themselves, they'll have a gunk wash just to darken them down a bit and age them, and then I'll go over with a cloth and wipe them down. But we can do the same with the cat now that he's dry and the decals are dry. Everything will have a gunk wash of Starship Filth, Migab Tai Lung 502 Starship Filth for those that haven't used it before. But we'll put the dudes on first, and these are 3D printed figures that I downloaded and printed out, and they've had a quick prime and then glue them in place, and then I'll go back and paint them right at the end. So we can get on and gunk wash the cat, and this is the scary stage now because everything ends up getting really dirty and mucked up, and you look at it and you think, oh my god, but it all comes together. So we got the bottle of it, but I've also got a tube of the oil just off shot there, and we'll just brush it all over so that you can see it all start taking shape. And it's just to get into the seam lines and the panel lines of the cat, and again you'll go over and you can wipe off any of the excess, but we'll go over his entire head. Everything ends up looking black as pitch, and you can get a little bit worried at this stage that you've gone over the top, should we say, but bear with it. Give everything a coat, and by the time you've got round to the last bits, the first bits are ready to have a wipe off. So just go over everything, because you know it's a working vehicle at the end of the day. It's on a quarry. It's going to get dusty, it's going to rain, the dust is going to get washed into the panel lines, then it's going to get dirty again, and then that's going to get washed in, so you'll have multiple layers of this stuff. So don't be shy putting it on there. Wipe it off. If you think, oh, it could do with a bit more in that little area, then go back at a certain area and do 2 or 3 coats on one area and only 1 on the other, so you end up with different shades of it. And what I tend to do at this stage, especially when it's Bandai plastic, is I'll sprinkle on a bit of pigment as if you was sprinkling on a bit of salt on your dinner with your fingers. And what I'll do is I'll just get a little bit of pigment and put it in my hand, and I'll just sprinkle it in a few places at this stage, and it sticks to the Starship Filth. And that will then give it a bit of texture as well, because Bandai plastic does react to some of the thinners and stuff, so you need to be mindful of that. So to prevent that, that's my little Festa cheat. So you can wipe that off, and it will drag some of the pigment along with it, so it almost gives a streaking effect and a rust streak, but without actually using any of the pigment fixers or the thinners that can attack Bandai plastic. And it's just something I learned over time, and it works for me. And then I roll the cloth around the end of a paintbrush just to get in any nooks and crannies when it comes to wiping it off. But again, if you've got some pigment powder and some makeup brushes, and that, you know, you can use them just to do a couple of downstrokes to add a bit of streaking effects to it. But You know, I could do a dot filter on it, but again, the thinners are going to attack the Bandai plastic. So for me, the Starship Filth is actually a good medium to put that all onto, and then as you wipe it down, just go back over it with a couple of downstrokes, and any pigments and dyes or anything that are on there, even if it's makeup powder, anything like that on a Bandai will work. I've got a big box of different coloured eye makeups, and I did get a strange look when I bought it. But for this it's perfect, because you just get the brush, add it to a bit of the Starship Filth, drag it down. So yeah, I've also got the Abtai Lung Smoke as well, so that'll work as well with that. It just gives a subtle effect. Give it a try, see what you think. So everything's had a coat and a wipe, so we can start assembling the cat. I'm getting an idea now of how it's going to come together, and the yellow tubing is going to run down the back of his Aris into the hydraulic pumps and all of that lot, and then it'll come out and go into the legs, because if you look at the digger arm on a JCB, although it's a mechanical machine, there's hydraulic hoses everywhere and they're all visible. Now in the movies, obviously that's all hidden because they got super technology, but I'm trying to do this as if it was in the modern world now. When you look at plant machinery, all the hydraulic hoses are all external, so that's what I'm doing with the cat, is just putting them all external. So yeah, that's why they're in there like that. So we'll carry on giving this a bit of the gunk wash treatment, and then we can start finally getting it all assembled and ready to do the reveal. So the legs are going on, as you can see, and then whop it on the diorama when we're done with this stage. So we'll carry on putting the legs on and standing it up and adjusting the legs so that we get a pose that we like. And this is the stage where you'll just bend the legs a bit, do a test pose, and I've got the diorama just off to one side so I can stand it on there as a little tester, but I shall bring it into shot in a sec, and we'll just get the cat on the dio, and then we can go, yep, the legs will fit, and I'll just keep adjusting them until I think it looks pleasing to the eye, and the cat actually stands up without falling over. And I'll drop the top on like so, and just move my camera so you can see the cat, and there you go. Stand it on the diorama and adjust the feet to fit like so, and I'll hot glue the bottoms of two of the feet, one at the front, one at the rear, so that it doesn't fall off the dio, but the other 2 feet then it just lets me move it around. So we've got a bit more of the Starship Filth to go over the plaque. It's had its gold lettering painted to the black background, so if I just put a bit of Starship Filth around that and let that settle, and I've stuck some dust around the feet there. That's from the weathering set that I described earlier, and I'm going to have a list of all the consumables I used at the end of this video. So if any of you have missed what paints and washes and things that I'm using at the end of this episode, and going forward the final stage of every build, the last video will always have a list of all the consumables I've used in that build series, just to give you guys an idea if you want to do your own. Anyway, now the cat's on there, I can go round and do all the final little touches up with a little bit of filth. I've got some wash for the mecha. It'll have some of that put on there, some staining for the exhausts, and then it's just bits of dust pigment, bits of streaking pigment, that sort of thing, whilst the Starship Filth is on there, and then I can run it with the brush down the filth, so to speak, and use a bit of the engine grime very carefully, because it's Bandai plastic, don't forget. So it's just tiny little mounts, and I'm only doing these around the hydraulic arms and rods and little bits round where the tubing goes in, where there may have been a previous link. And some of you eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed that one of the legs at the front, the bottom half, hasn't been weathered. Now the reason that is it's had maintenance done, and it's had a new leg fitted at the front because it got broke, so it's going to be cleaner than the other bits. So yeah, so it's not as weathered as the other three, so that it looks as if it's had a spare part fitted, and that's the only reason that's done like that. As you can see, she's beginning to take shape, so it's just little highlights here and there, and then I'll do a bit of dry brushing over some of the edges of the cat, just to use a bit of flat aluminium and metal and different pigments to brush against it, just to try to give the look of dings and dents. And then we'll clean off the nameplates to reveal the lettering. And at the very back there's obviously a Festa 6.7's workshop plaque, in case anyone wonders who made the build. It's on there. And the guys at eModels that have got this build now, I've probably not noticed, but there's a little personal message written underneath the diorama, and I do it on all my builds. Somewhere in the model is always a little set of initials and a date I assign me models, but underneath it's just a little personal message to the guys at eModels that I wrote underneath. And you never know, one of them one day might be in the cabinet having a look at it and look up and go, oh, there's a message under there. So yeah, this is where James goes and lifts it out to try and read it and drops it. Sorry, James. But we'll just give this a little clean, and I keep going at the plaques just so that I get the tarnishing effect that I'm after. So I'll be fussing over this now with me rather dirty bit of cloth, and just going over little bits and pieces, wiping off the starship filth until it reveals what I want to see, which is a bit of aged brass, etc. But it's getting to that stage now where she's nearing the end of the build. It's actually come together really well. Luckily for me, I've got the original cat on a shelf at the end of the room I'm working in, so it's always easy when you've done one before to do one for someone else. But it's been a real pleasure to build for eModels. So as I'm coming to the end of this build and getting ready for the reveal, I'd just like to say, if any of you out there want to build a cat of your own, nip over to our sponsor eModels.co.uk and give their store a browse. They've got the range of these Star Wars kits. They're not going to be there forever. They're a limited supply, so nip over there as soon as possible and bung one in your basket and grab one. Sit and build it along with me as you watch this video. But in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you all for watching. Thank you to eModels for asking me to build this, and I'm going to leave you now with a little slideshow and movie of the review.